On Christmas Eve, when I was 18, my stepmother slapped me by the tree and threw me out into the snow. 15 years later, on the same night, I stood in court as the defendant and the county's top prosecutor. I was ready for her legal attacks, but then my cousin slipped me a note in the Nativity set, and the neat victim story my stepmother had built for 20 years began to crumble. My name is Lila Ryan. The Riverside County Justice Center is usually tense, but on December 24th, it's a special kind of hell. The air outside is biting, fresh snow clinging to the concrete plaza, but inside courtroom 3B, the thermostat is cranked, and the air is thick enough to choke on. It feels hot, like a string pulled too tight, heavy with the smell of wet wool and simmering resentment. I should know. I'm 32, nearly 33, and I work in this building. I'm a prosecutor with the Westbridge District Attorney's Office, Criminal Division. I usually walk through these metal detectors with a sense of purpose. My files heavy with evidence against society's worst, my heels clicking with the confidence of someone who knows which side of the law she stands on. Today, I walk through as the defendant. My name wasn't called from a charging sheet. It was called from a civil summons, a probate dispute, a fight over my grandfather's will. And there she is, the plaintiff, Vivian Lane, my stepmother. She's putting on a spectacular show for the lone local news camera idling by the entrance. She's draped in a cream-colored wool coat that probably cost more than my first car. Her makeup is a perfect, neutral mask of grief. A diamond tennis bracelet flashes on the wrist that she keeps dabbing at her dry eyes. She clings to her lawyer's arm, the very picture of a devastated mother forced into this ugly public spectacle. My father, Douglas Lane, hovers behind her left shoulder. He's a ghost in a suit, his gaze fixed on the scuffed tile floor. He hasn't looked at me once, not when I walked in, not when his own name was called as a co-plaintiff. He is, as he has always been, an accessory to her performance, a silent, hollow man who signed the papers that accuse his own daughter of manipulation and theft. He's trying to blend into the wood paneling. Trailing them, the final member of their unhappy parade, is my cousin, Maddie Cole. She looks tiny, swallowed by a drab gray parka. She must be 19, maybe 20 by now, but she looks 12. She follows Vivian like a shadow, her eyes locked on the ground. She's terrified. I can see her hands trembling, stuffed deep into her pockets. Maddie knows things. She always has, and she's always been too scared to say them. We file into the courtroom. The familiar smell of old paper, floor wax, and stale coffee hits me. All rise, the Honorable Judge Halcott presiding. Judge Halcott takes the bench. He's a gruff, fair man. I've argued in front of him maybe a dozen times. He nods at the prosecution and defense tables. Then his eyes land on me, sitting at the defendant's table. His eyebrows shoot up, just for a second. It's a look of pure, unadulterated surprise. A look that says, "Ms. Ryan? What in the hell are you doing over there?" He clears his throat. Case 2024, CV 9112. Lane versus Ryan. A dispute regarding the estate of Henry Cole. He looks over his glasses. I see we have counsel for the plaintiffs and for the defendant. Vivian's lawyer, Grant Holloway, pops up. He's slick, all pinstripes and practiced sincerity. Your Honor, Grant Holloway for the plaintiffs, Vivian and Douglas Lane. I stand. My knees feel stiff. Lila Ryan, Your Honor, Prosi, co-counseling with Mr. Noah Mercer of Mercer Strategies, who is present. Noah, seated beside me, gives a crisp nod. He's young, sharp, and knows civil procedure backward, but the strategy, the heart of this fight, is mine. Holloway doesn't wait. He launches right in, his voice booming with rehearsed indignation. Your Honor, we are here today because my client, Mrs. Lane, the devoted daughter who cared for Mr. Cole in his declining years. I almost laugh. Devoted, the word is acid on my tongue. Has been grievously wronged. She has been cut out of her rightful inheritance by the defendant. He points a dramatic finger at me, who used undue influence to manipulate her elderly, Ailing grandfather. This is a pattern of behavior, Your Honor. The defendant has a history. These baseless allegations of abuse she's made, they stem from a rebellious childhood, attempts to sow discord in a happy home. My blood pressure spikes, but I keep my face neutral. This is what they do. Rewrite history. Paint the victim as the aggressor. I've seen this tactic in 100 domestic violence cases. Ms. Ryan? Halcott prompts, looking at me. I stand again, my voice steady, colder than I intended. Your Honor, Mr. Holloway is painting a compelling piece of fiction. The reality, which discovery will prove, is that my grandfather was of perfectly sound mind. As for my history, I'm afraid Mr. Holloway has it backward. I pause, letting the silence hang. I am, however, used to standing on the other side of this podium. I'm used to hearing fabricated defenses, so this strategy is familiar. Halcott's lips twitch. He knows me. He knows my conviction rate. He knows I don't bluff. The air crackles. I sit, and as I do, I glance at the plaintiff's side. Maddie. She's looking right at me. Her eyes are wide, filled with a desperate, screaming plea. Help me. Then, as quickly as it came, the look is gone. Vivian must have nudged her under the table. Maddie's gaze drops back to her lap, her shoulders hunching. She knows. She knows what Holloway just said is a lie. She was there. Judge Halcott sighs. Mr. Holloway, Ms. Ryan, this is a preliminary hearing. It is the day before Christmas. Surely this court's time is not best spent on emergency mediation that could wait until January. Holloway stands again. With respect, Your Honor, my client is suffering extreme emotional distress. To have her good name slandered by her own stepchild during the holidays. She seeks immediate relief. She is being victimized all over again. Victimized. The word hangs in the air. Grotesque. I feel the old, cold anger rising in my throat. This isn't about a will. It was never just about the money. This is about that night. This is the final, bloody round of a fight that started 15 years ago. On Christmas Eve. When I was 18. This is about the slap, the broken ornaments, and the sound of the deadbolt clicking behind me as I stood freezing on the porch. This is the culmination of the night my stepmother beat me and threw me out of my own home. Halcott pinches the bridge of his nose. I am not inclined to grant emergency relief based on holiday distress. We will recess and set a date for discovery arguments in January. We are done here. The gavel cracks. It feels like a starting gun. I sit back down, gathering my papers. My hands are perfectly still. I stack the legal pads, align the pens. Noah leans over. You okay? That was intense. I'm fine, I murmur. I can feel her watching me. I don't need to turn around to know. I can feel the heat of Vivian's stare on the back of my neck. It's the same look she gave me that night, a look of triumph and pure, unadulterated hatred. I place my files into my briefcase. She thinks she has me cornered. She thinks I'm still that 18-year-old girl she can push around. She has no idea what I've become. This isn't just a fight over a will. This is a battle where every word, every memory, every forgotten detail is a weapon, and this time, I'm the one who knows how to use them. I stepped out of the courthouse into the 24th of December. The cold hit me, sharp and clean, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat of courtroom 3B. The snow was falling in lazy, fat flakes. It was this exact cold, this exact date, that always brought the memory back, not as a vague recollection, but as a full-bodied physiological event. 15 years ago, the year I turned 18. We had just moved to Maple Ridge that summer, into the large, drafty house my grandfather, Henry Cole, had bought years ago. My mother, my real mother, had died when I was 10, and for 3 years, it was just me and my father, Douglas. We had a quiet, sad equilibrium. Then came Vivian. I was 13. She was magnetic. That was the word he used. She had bright, loud hair, a laugh that filled the room, and a way of touching my father's arm that made him blush like a teenager. "This is our chance, Elena," he told me, his eyes pleading. "A chance for you to have a mother again." I didn't want a mother. I wanted my mother. But I was 13, so I just nodded. The first year was all honey. She bought me clothes I didn't ask for. She cooked elaborate meals. She called me sweetheart. The sweetness held just long enough for her to get her name on the joint bank account with my father. Then, the control started. It was subtle at first. She didn't like the public high school I was zoned for. "The kids there look rough," she'd said, sniffing. She enrolled me in a stricter private day school across town, one where I knew no one. Then she took over the finances. "Douglas, you work so hard," she'd coo, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Let me handle the bills. You shouldn't have to worry your handsome head about it." My father, always looking for the path of least resistance, handed her the checkbook with visible relief. He started working late more often. He was always having to work overtime. The house, which had been my grandfather's and was supposed to be a fresh start, stopped feeling like mine. I became a guest, a boarder. My posters came down, replaced by her sterile beige art. My music was noise. My friends were bad influences. I learned to make myself small, to live in the margins of her new, perfect life. That brings me to the year I turned 18. That Christmas, I was drowning in college applications, dreaming of law school. It was the only thing that kept me going, the only escape hatch I could see. My grandfather, Henry, knew it. He wasn't just my grandfather. He was my only real ally. He'd call me every Sunday night. One night in early December, I was in the kitchen, on the old landline, talking to him. "I'm worried about the cost, Grandpa," I admitted, staring at the tuition estimates for Northwestern. "You let me worry about that." Henry's voice, warm and gravelly, came through the receiver. "You get in. That's your only job. You get in, and I will handle the rest. I've always taken care of my own, Elena, and you are my own." What I didn't know was that Vivian was on the upstairs extension, listening. I heard the faint click as she hung up, just moments before I did. A cold dread settled in my stomach. She didn't say anything for a week. She just watched me. It was a new kind of look. Speculative. Calculating. The look of someone realizing an asset they'd overlooked was suddenly critically valuable, and not theirs. She had realized Henry, her own father, intended to leave his money, the real money, to me, his granddaughter, not to his son-in-law, and certainly not to his new wife. Christmas Eve, December 24th. Vivian was obsessed with appearances. She was throwing a massive party for the entire extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles. She was determined to play the part of the perfect matriarch in the perfect family home. The house smelled oppressively of roasting meat, pine, and cinnamon. I was late. I had to be. I was working 40 hours a week at a diner, saving every penny for application fees and a car that would get me out of that house. I walked in around 7 p.m., my uniform smelling of coffee and fry grease, my feet aching. The living room was full. Music was playing, and Vivian was holding court by the fireplace. "And I just don't know what to do with her," she was saying, her voice laced with that fake, syrupy concern. Several relatives, the ones who only saw her on holidays, looked at her with pity. "She's just rebellious, so ungrateful. She's broken poor Henry's heart. You know, he's so disappointed in her." I stopped dead in the entryway. The snow from my boots melted onto the hardwood floor. "What are you talking about?" The music seemed to dip. Vivian turned, her smile tightening. "Elena, sweetheart, you're late, and you're tracking slush everywhere." "You're lying about me," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the chatter. "You're lying about Grandpa Henry." She grabbed my elbow, her nails digging in. "We do not air our laundry in front of guests," she hissed, dragging me toward the kitchen. She pushed me through the swinging door. My father was there, leaning against the counter, nursing a glass of bourbon. He looked exhausted. "What is your problem?" Vivian snapped, her entire demeanor changing the second the door swung shut. The mask was off. You want to embarrass me? You want to ruin Christmas? You were lying about me. You told them I hurt Grandpa. Oh, grow up, she sneered. I heard you on the phone. I know what you're doing. You think you're going to manipulate that old man? Worm your way into his wallet? You think you're going to take our money? It's his money, I shot back. And he offered to help me with school. Unlike you, you haven't paid for a single application. You ungrateful little brat, she spat. After everything I've done for you, I gave you a home. This isn't my home. This is a prison, and you're just a glorified warden. I looked at my father. Dad, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Are you going to let her lie? Douglas swirled his drink. He looked at the ice. He looked at the wall. He looked anywhere but at me. He said nothing. That silence was the real betrayal. That silence was the permission she needed. Vivian's face went purple. I am sick of you. It happened fast. It wasn't a fight. It was an assault. She lunged, and her hand connected with my face. The force of it was staggering. It wasn't a simple slap. It was a backhand, full force, fueled by years of resentment and the sudden, terrifying fear of losing the inheritance she'd been counting on. I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall right next to the Christmas tree. My head hit the drywall. A cascade of red and gold glass ornaments showered down, exploding on the hardwood floor around my feet. The sound was sharp, like tiny gunshots. The swinging door flew open. The relatives, they stood there, mouths open, frozen. Not one of them moved to help me. They just watched. I clutched my cheek, the sting so sharp it brought tears to my eyes, but the humiliation burned hotter. Get out, Vivian whispered, her voice shaking with rage. She stormed past me, up the stairs. I heard her rummaging in my room, the sound of drawers being pulled open. A minute later, she came down, dragging my old suitcase. She marched to the front door, unlocked it, and threw the suitcase onto the snow-covered porch. You want to live on Henry's money? She screamed, her voice echoing in the sudden, terrible silence of the party. Fine, go live with him. She grabbed my arm and dragged me from the kitchen, through the stunned crowd of relatives, to the front door. She shoved me out onto the porch. The cold hit me instantly, a brutal shock to my tear-hot skin. Vivian, don't, my father said, his voice weak, a pathetic, late protest. You stay out of this, Douglas, she snarled. She shut the door. I heard the click of the deadbolt. I was 18 years old, in a thin diner uniform, standing in a snowstorm on Christmas Eve, locked out of my home. I pounded on the door. Once, let me in, it's freezing. Through the frosted glass panel, I saw a small shape, my cousin, Maddie. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. She was standing at the top of the staircase, her small hand clutching her teddy bear, her face pale with terror. She had seen all of it. She saw the lie and she saw the truth. I saw her take a step forward, and then a hand, Vivian's, reached into the frame and yanked her back, pulling her out of sight. The porch light clicked off, plunging me into darkness. That was it, the end. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my cheap flip phone. I dialed the only number I knew by heart. He answered on the second ring. Henry Cole. Grandpa? My voice broke. She kicked me out. She hit me, and she kicked me out. There was no hesitation, no questions, just the steady, calm authority I'd clung to my entire life. Where are you, Elena? On the porch. She locked the door. Stay there. I'm coming. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He was there in 7. His old Buick skidded to a stop in the driveway. He didn't get out. He just pushed the passenger door open from the inside. I grabbed my suitcase, ran through the snow, and fell into the seat. He didn't say a word. He just handed me a handkerchief. As he pulled out of the driveway, I looked back at the house. The party lights were still twinkling. The music was playing again. My father never called. He never even came to the window. That night, I slept on the sofa in Henry's warm, quiet living room, the one that smelled like old books and pipe tobacco. He'd wrapped me in my grandmother's old wool blanket. I lay there, my cheek throbbing, the sound of breaking glass echoing in my ears, and I made a vow. I would never be weak again. I would never be voiceless again. And I would never, ever let that woman or the man who enabled her win. I would never again be the girl left standing in the cold. Henry's house in Lakeside Grove was the opposite of the one I'd just left. It wasn't a showpiece. It was a home. It smelled of old books, strong coffee, and the faint, sweet scent of his pipe tobacco, even though he'd given it up years ago. The furniture was old, dark wood, worn smooth in all the right places. The only sounds were the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall and the quiet murmur of the classical music station he always kept on the radio. That first night, he didn't ask me what happened. He just made me a grilled cheese sandwich and a cup of hot cocoa, as if I were 6 instead of 18. He put me in the guest room, which had been my grandmother's sewing room. It was warm, and it was safe. That house became my sanctuary. It became my home base for the next 8 years. When the acceptance letters started rolling in, it wasn't my father who took me on college tours. It was Henry. He put on his one good tweed blazer, got his old Buick washed, and drove me to Ann Arbor, to Chicago, to New Haven. He'd walk the campuses with me, his hands clasped behind his back, looking more like a visiting professor than a doting grandfather. He was the one who sat with me at the Northwestern information session. Afterward, over coffee, he'd tap the law school brochure I'd picked up. "This is the one. Elena," he'd said, his voice firm. "You've got the mind for it. More importantly, you've got the spine." "I don't know. Grandpa, it's so much school." "It is." He'd nodded, stirring his coffee. "But you need to learn how to fight people who use the rules to break the rules. You need to know how to counter the ones who use laws for all the wrong reasons. You've met them. So have I." I knew exactly who he meant. He was giving me my armor. My father, Douglas, made a few appearances during those college years. They were always awkward, brief, and tinged with a thick layer of guilt, his, which he promptly tried to make mine. We'd meet at a neutral diner halfway between Lakeside Grove and Maple Ridge. He'd show up alone, looking rumpled. Your mother is just," he'd start, staring into his coffee cup. "She doesn't want to cause any more trouble. Elena, she feels awful about how things went down." "Did she tell you that?" I'd ask, my voice flat. "Well, not in so many words, but you know Vivian, she's sensitive. She feels like you just abandoned us, like you abandoned me. I was thrown out, Dad, in the snow, on Christmas Eve." "You were 18, he'd mutter, falling back on the excuse they'd clearly rehearsed. "You were an adult. You made a choice." "I didn't make a choice. You made one. You chose to stay inside and let her lock the door." He'd flinch. Then the anger would come, the weak anger of a man who can't stand to look at his own reflection. "I'm not going to be lectured by my own daughter. I'm just trying to keep the peace. You have no idea how hard it is." He'd slide a $20 bill across the table, meant for gas money. It felt like a bribe to shut up. I never took it. He always left in a huff, blaming me for making things difficult. After the third time, he stopped calling. Vivian never called, not once. She didn't have to. She had a direct line to the only person she cared about, Henry. Her texts and emails to him were relentless. I only knew because I'd sometimes see his phone light up on the kitchen counter, her name flashing on the screen. He never read them in front of me, but I caught glimpses. "Dad, I'm in a real bind. Douglas lost his job again. The company downsized. We can't make the mortgage payment. Maddie needs special tutoring. It's so expensive, but it's for her future." My grandfather, a retired accountant and ex-judge, was a creature of habit and documentation. He responded to her emotional chaos with meticulous order. In his study, he kept a set of small, leather-bound ledgers. At first, I just thought he was balancing his own accounts. It was only later I realized what he was doing. He was logging every single cent he sent her. Each entry was precise. Date, amount, reason given, method of transfer, January 15th, $2,000. Douglas's knee surgery copay, March 1st, $5,000. Property tax short all, July 10th, $3,000. Maddie's summer camp. The list went on, page after page, year after year. It was a river of money, all flowing in one direction, all while I was working 2 jobs to get through undergrad and eating ramen noodles 4 nights a week. When I graduated from college, summa cum laude, there was one person in the family section, Henry. He sat in the front row, his ancient camera hanging from his neck, beaming. When I got into law school, the same one he'd pointed to all those years ago, he took me out for the best steak in the city. He raised a glass of water. To Elena Ryan, Esquire, almost. He sat in the front row at my law school graduation, too. By then, his walk was slower, but his eyes were just as sharp. The seats on either side of him were empty. It was after that graduation, as we were having dinner, that he first mentioned the will. He was 81, and for the first time, he was acknowledging his own mortality. "We need to talk about my estate, Elena," he said quietly, cutting his pot roast. "Grandpa, don't, that's morbid." "It's not morbid. It's practical. I've made changes. I've rewritten my will." He put down his fork and looked at me, his gaze intense. "I've made you the executrix and the primary beneficiary." My stomach dropped. "What? No, absolutely not. You can't." "It's done." "Grandpa, you can't. What about them? What about Vivian? And my father?" "What about them, Elena? This will start a war. She'll be furious. She'll sue. She'll say I manipulated you. Please, just divide it equally. Give her the house in Maple Ridge. Give them whatever they want. I don't care. It's not worth the fight. I just want peace." Henry smiled, but it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen on his face. "Oh, my girl," he said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "Peace isn't what they want, and fair isn't always equal. You can't buy peace from a bully. You can only rent it, and the price keeps going up. I've been paying that rent for 15 years. He tapped his temple. "It stops. With me." From that day on, he was a man on a mission. He wasn't just getting his affairs in order, he was building a fortress. I realized he was using his last years to do for me what my own father never had: protect me. He went to his lawyer, alone. He went to his doctor, alone, and specifically requested a full cognitive assessment, getting a notarized letter stating he was of sound mind and body. He even visited a neuropsychologist for a baseline mental acuity test. He was collecting affidavits for his own sanity, stacking his defenses against the attack he knew Vivian would launch the second he was gone. He introduced me to his lawyer, Eleanor Briggs. She was a woman in her late 60s, sharp as a tack, with zero patience for nonsense. She looked me up and down in her old, wood-paneled office. "So you're the granddaughter," she said, not unkindly. "Henry's project." "I guess so," I murmured. "He's a smart man," Eleanor said, leaning back in her leather chair. "Smarter than all of us. He's doing everything right, dotting every I. But I'm warning you, child. That stepmother of yours, Vivian is the kind of person who will bite any hand that doesn't give her exactly what she wants. And even then, she'll probably bite it for not giving it to her sooner." The warning hung in the air, cold and stark. Henry did one last thing, a final move on the chessboard. He quietly added a codicil to his will. He didn't even tell me about it. I only found out later. He established the Cole Family Scholarship Fund, endowing it with a significant portion of his portfolio, specifically for children being raised by their grandparents. It was his last, perfect message to the world. It was a detail I knew, instinctively, would make Vivian absolutely insane. It was money she couldn't touch. Money that validated my story, not hers. He began to fade that last year. After I'd started at the DA's office, it was his heart. He was tired. I'd come over on weekends. And we'd sit in his study, me reading case files, him doing the crossword, or just dozing in his big chair. One of the last times we spoke, he was lucid, his eyes clear and focused on me. "They're going to come for you, Elena," he whispered. His voice was thin, but the steel was still there. "I know, Grandpa. It's okay. I can handle it." "You can, but I want you to remember something." He gripped my hand, his knuckles bony but his grip surprisingly strong. "When they attack you, don't just defend. That's what they expect. That's what your father always did. And look where it got him." His eyes held mine. "You're a prosecutor now. You know how to build a case. You show them what you learned from me." He passed away 2 nights later, in his sleep, just gone. The funeral was simple, just as he'd wanted. I held it together until I saw Eleanor Briggs slip into the back pew, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Vivian and my father arrived late. Just as I was about to begin the eulogy, they swept in. Vivian in a ridiculously expensive black dress and a veil. A veil. She made a show of collapsing into the front pew, sobbing loudly into my father's shoulder. I saw the local news camera I'd specifically asked not to be there, clicking away by the door. She must have called them. She was already building her case. She was already the grieving daughter. The victim. The performance had begun. Eleanor Briggs' office was a temple of mahogany, old leather, and ironclad contracts. It was the kind of place that smelled like lemon oil and centuries of paper. A stark, silent room built for the delivery of facts. It was the absolute last place Vivian Lane could ever truly thrive. She looked small and brittle sitting at the massive conference table, her expensive mourning attire seeming to shrink in the face of Eleanor's quiet authority. We were all there. Me, at one end, trying to keep my breathing steady. Vivian and my father. Douglas sat opposite, a united front of feigned grief, and in the corner, by the door, sat Maddie. She was 19 now, no longer the little girl on the stairs, but a pale, watchful young woman who seemed to be holding her breath. Her eyes fixed on the grain of the wood table. A few other distant cousins, drawn by the scent of a reading, filled the remaining chairs. Eleanor Briggs, in a crisp gray suit that matched her hair, put on her reading glasses. She did not offer tea. She did not offer condolences. She got straight to the point. "I have here the last will and testament of Henry Cole, dated August 10th of this past year," she announced, her voice cutting through the silence. "I will read it in full." She began, her voice a dry monotone, dispatching the minor bequests, his favorite armchair to his old chess partner, a donation to the local library. Vivian's foot began to tap, a rapid, impatient rhythm against the floor. Then, Eleanor reached the main articles. Article 4. Regarding my primary residence at Lakeside Grove, all associated real estate holdings under Cole Investments LLC, and the entirety of my personal investment portfolio and securities. This was it. The room went utterly still. I could hear the faint tick of the clock on the wall. "I bequeath, in their entirety, and with all love and gratitude, to my granddaughter, Elena Ryan." I heard a sound, a small, sharp intake of air from across the table. It wasn't just Vivian. It was my father, too. Maddie looked up, her eyes wide, and stared right at me. Eleanor wasn't finished. Article 5. To my daughter, Vivian Lane, I bequeath the sum of $25,000 to be paid from the estate, with which I hope she finds the peace she has often claimed to be seeking. Silence. $25,000. It was a slap in the face. It was less than the cost of the diamonds on her wrist. It was a precisely calculated, final, devastating message from Henry. It was, I realized with a jolt, almost exactly the amount I'd calculated she'd wheedled out of him in just the last year. Vivian's reaction was a masterpiece of theater. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. She gasped, a trembling hand flying to her chest. Tears, perfect and immediate, welled in her eyes. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly, and wobbled around the table. She came straight to me. Before I could react, she grabbed my hands. Her skin was ice cold. "Oh, Elena," she whispered, her voice choked with manufactured sorrow. "Honey, what did you do?" She pulled me into a hug, crushing me against her stiff suit, her sharp perfume filling my nose. "He was so confused at the end," she sobbed into my hair, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "He didn't know what he was doing. You convinced him this was what he wanted. Oh, my poor, confused girl." She pulled back, gripping my shoulders. "Don't you worry," she said, her voice full of false strength. "We will fix this. I'll protect you. We're family." She'd done it in 30 seconds, flipped the entire narrative. I wasn't the heir. I was the manipulator. He wasn't sound of mind. He was a confused old man. She wasn't the disinherited. She was the protector. But as she held me, I saw her eyes. They were wet. Yes, but behind the tears, they were glittering with a cold, reptilian hatred I knew better than my own face. "Mrs. Lane, please sit down." Eleanor's voice sliced through the performance. "We are not finished." Vivian looked startled, her act interrupted. She returned to her seat, dabbing her eyes. Eleanor adjusted her glasses. Mr. Cole was extremely thorough. He included several addendums, as well as a notarized letter, which he instructed be read at this time. She picked up a separate sheet of paper. "This is from Henry, dated the same day as the will. I am writing this to be read aloud, because I know the character of the people who will be in this room. I have made my decision regarding my heir with a clear mind, a full heart, and a sound legal footing. My granddaughter, Elena Ryan, is my sole primary beneficiary for one reason, and one reason only. She was the only one who showed up." Vivian froze. Eleanor continued reading Henry's words. She was the one who was present not for money, but for companionship. She was the one who asked for nothing and gave everything. My other relations, here. Eleanor looked up over her glasses directly at Vivian and Douglas, were, to my great sorrow, present only when they required financial assistance, which I provided in hopes of peace, not out of obligation. The bomb had landed. It wasn't just a disinheritance, it was a character reference. He had, from beyond the grave, put their motives on the record. The mask didn't just crack, it disintegrated. The tears vanished. Vivian's face, pale and pinched, flushed a dark, mottled red. "He was senile," she snapped. Her voice was no longer the choked whisper of a grieving daughter. It was the raw, angry rasp I remembered from that Christmas Eve. He was out of his mind. He didn't know what he was saying. He had dementia. "He did not," Eleanor stated flatly, tapping another file. "I have here a full cognitive evaluation from Dr. Allister, dated 1 week prior to the signing of the will, affirming Mr. Cole was of exceptionally sound mind and fully competent to handle all his affairs." "This is a farce," Vivian shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. "She did this. She isolated him. She poisoned him against his own family, his real daughter." She rounded on me, her finger trembling as she pointed. You will not get away with this. I will see you in court. I will drag you through hell. I will take everything." This was it, the moment I had dreaded. All eyes turned to my father. This was his chance, after 15 years of silence, his one final opportunity to stand up for me, to say, "Stop, that's enough." Douglas just looked bewildered, like a man who'd woken up in the wrong room. He stood up, but he stood beside his wife. He cleared his throat and looked at Eleanor, his gaze sliding past me. This isn't right," he mumbled. "Henry never told me about a new will. He never said anything to me about this." "That is correct, Mr. Lane," Eleanor said, her voice dripping ice. "My records show my office contacted you on 3 separate occasions to attend the signing and review the documents with your father-in-law. You canceled each time. I believe your secretary cited a work conflict." My father's face went white. He'd been invited. He'd been offered a front row seat to the truth, and he had, as always, been too busy. Vivian didn't even wait for the elevator. As we walked out of the office, I could hear her, her voice already back in its smooth, victimized cadence, her phone pressed to her ear. "Ben, it's Vivian. Oh, Ben, it's the most awful thing." "Thank you. Thank you. Listen, are you sitting down? It's about my father's will." "My stepdaughter." "Yes, the one I raised. She took everything. Ben, she convinced him to write me completely out. I'm devastated." She was already spinning the story. My father just stood there, shell-shocked, holding her coat. The opening salvo was fired 1 week later. The Riverside County Beacon, a free local paper, landed on my desk at the DA's office. Someone had left it there, folded open to the front page. The headline was massive. "Devoted daughter robbed of inheritance. Elderly father manipulated by prosecutor's stepchild." And there was the photo, a picture from the funeral, one she must have staged. Vivian, looking angelic and heartbroken, clutching a framed military photo of Henry. My title, my job, she'd used it. I felt the blood drain from my face. The bullpen, usually a hive of noise, felt suddenly quiet. I could hear the whispers. "Is that Ryan?" Her stepmother? My boss, Marla Jennings, called me into her office, her face unreadable, the paper already on her desk. "Elena," she said, "what the hell is this?" Before I could even formulate a defense, a courier walked into the office, straight to my desk, in front of everyone. I had to sign for the thick, white envelope. Vivian and Douglas Lane v. Elena Ryan. I read the summons in my office. The door locked. They were officially contesting the will. They were suing to have it voided, citing 2 primary causes. 1. Henry Cole was mentally incompetent, suffering from dementia and delusions at the time of the signing. That, Eleanor's file would burn to the ground. 2. Elena Ryan exercised undue influence, isolating Mr. Cole from his true family and preying on his weakened state. And then, I saw it. The 3rd allegation, the one that made my stomach turn to ice. Furthermore, I read, my vision blurring. The defendant, Elena Ryan, has a documented history of emotional instability and violent adolescent outbursts directed at the plaintiff, Mrs. Lane. I read the next paragraph twice, not believing the words. On the night of December 24th, 15 years ago, the defendant, in a fit of rage after her attempts to extort money from the family were refused, physically assaulted Mrs. Lane, pushing her into the family Christmas tree. Mrs. Lane, fearing for her safety, was forced to defend herself. The defendant then fled the home and has since perpetuated a fictional abuse narrative in an attempt to divide Mr. Lane from his wife and ultimately to defraud Mr. Cole of his estate. It was perfect, a complete, perfect inversion of the truth. I wasn't the victim, I was the abuser. She wasn't the attacker, she was defending herself. The slap, the broken glass, the locked door. It was all just a story I'd invented to get rich. This was the lawsuit that had landed on Judge Halcott's desk. This was the narrative that brought us all to that courtroom on Christmas Eve. I sat in my office, long after the cleaning crew had come and gone. The city lights twinkled, red and green, festive and mocking. On my shelf, a silver frame held a photo of me and Henry, beaming at my law school graduation. His arm was around my shoulder, his face so proud. I looked at his picture, the legal summons heavy as a brick in my lap. "Oh, Grandpa," I whispered to the empty room. "You told me to show them what I learned from you, but how far do I have to go? How hard am I supposed to fight back?" I sat in my office until midnight, the summons in my hand feeling heavier than any case file I'd ever carried. Vivian's accusation, that I was the violent one, that she was the victim, wasn't just a lie. It was a strategic, preemptive strike. She wasn't just trying to get the will invalidated. She was trying to get me disbarred. She was coming for my life, my career, my entire future, all built on the foundation Henry had given me. That's when the grief finally receded, replaced by something cold and familiar, the anger. But it wasn't the hot, messy anger of that 18-year-old girl. It was the focused, methodical, and patient anger of a prosecutor. She wanted to fight? Fine. She just brought a personal drama to a professional's doorstep, and I was the best in the county. The next morning, I was in Marla Jennings' office at 8 a.m. sharp. "I need to take a leave of absence," I said, placing the summons and the newspaper on her desk. "Elena, you don't—" "I do," I said, cutting her off gently. "I'm not just a beneficiary, Marla. I'm now an accused abuser and a manipulator in a public filing. Anything I do to defend myself while on the county's payroll will be seen as a conflict of interest. She's counting on me being too compromised to fight back." Marla read the summons, her expression hardening. "This is vile. Elena, violent adolescent outbursts?" "She's flipping the script from Christmas Eve, 15 years ago, the night she threw me out." Marla leaned back. "You're right. She's trying to get you fired. Take the leave. Officially, it's for personal family matters. Unofficially, you go build your case, and you burn them to the ground." My first call was to Noah Mercer. He was young, hungry, and specialized in exactly this kind of scorched earth civil litigation. I'd sent him a few referrals from the DA's office, and he owed me. "Noah, Elena Ryan." "Elena, what's up? Got another one for me?" "I do," I said, walking into his office an hour later. "It's my case. I'm the client." I laid out the summons. He read it, his eyes widening. "She's accusing you of undue influence? A prosecutor? That's bold." "It's suicidal," I said. "But she doesn't know it yet. I'm retaining you. Noah, you will handle the civil procedure. You will file the motions. You will be the face. But the strategy, the investigation, that's all mine. You're here to keep me legal." Noah grinned. "You're turning yourself into your own lead investigator. I love it. Where do we start, boss?" "We start at Henry's house." That weekend, I went back to Lakeside Grove. The house was mine now, but it felt different, colder. I sat in Henry's study, the smell of his books and coffee still lingering. I had spent years in this room, but now I was seeing it with new eyes, not as a grandchild, but as a forensic accountant. I ran my hands along the underside of his massive oak desk. Henry was an old-school man. He believed in analog. I found the catch, a small wooden button disguised as a dowel pin. I pressed it. A side panel in the knee well clicked open, revealing a shallow, hidden compartment. And there they were, the ledgers. Not one, but 5 small, leather-bound notebooks. I opened the first one. The date on the first page was from just 6 months after she married my father. His handwriting was immaculate, precise. July 10th, $500. Vivian. Car trouble? August 1st, $200. Vivian. School clothes for Elena. A lie. I never saw a cent. I flipped through, page after page, year after year, 15 years of financial bloodletting. He had 2 categories. The first was a monthly stipend he sent them, disguised as family support. It was a consistent $2,000 a month for 15 years, but it was the second category that made my blood run cold. The emergencies. January 5th, $8,000. Vivian. Douglas's knee surgery. April 20th, $4,000. Vivian. Maddie's emergency dental work. September 2nd, $10,000. Vivian. To cover Douglas's lost commission. It was a flood. I spent 6 hours cross-referencing the ledgers, entering every date and every dollar amount into a spreadsheet on my laptop. When I was done, I stared at the final number, not including the monthly stipend. Henry had given Vivian and my father an additional $742,000. It was enough to buy 2 houses in Maple Ridge, all while she was crafting a public narrative of being the poor, devoted daughter just trying to get by. The next step was to verify. I called Eleanor Briggs. "Eleanor, it's Elena. I need you to subpoena Henry's bank records for the last 15 years, and while you're at it, subpoena the joint accounts for Vivian and Douglas Lane. I have a list of dates. I want to see where the money went." "I thought you'd never ask," she said, her voice grim. "I'll have a messenger pick up those ledgers." This is what he was preparing for. While Noah handled the subpoenas through Eleanor, I started on a different trail. Vivian's. I'd blocked her on all social media years ago, but Maddie hadn't. I created a new, anonymous account and went diving. It was a sickeningly perfect timeline. January 10th, 5 days after the knee surgery money, Vivian, on a cruise ship, tagging herself in the Bahamas. Caption: "My man deserves a break, soaking up the sun." April 25th, 5 days after Maddie's dental work. A new, bright red convertible in their driveway. Caption: "Decided to treat myself. Blessed September 15th. 2 weeks after Douglas's lost commission. Vivian and my father, clinking champagne glasses in what looked like a very expensive restaurant in Paris. I saved every picture, every post. I cross-referenced the dates with Henry's ledgers. The emergencies weren't emergencies. They were vacation funds. They were car payments. They were her personal slush fund, and she'd used her own husband's alleged failures as the leverage. But Henry knew. He must have. I went back to his desk. Tucked in the back of his main drawer, under a stack of old tax returns, was a plain manila folder labeled V. It wasn't bank statements. It was emails. Printed emails. She had been stupid enough to put it in writing. The early ones were all saccharine. "Daddy, I miss you so much. I'm so worried about Douglas. He's working himself to the bone." Followed by a request for a few $1,000s. The later ones, from the last 5 years, were different. The mask was slipping. The tone was impatient. Entitled. "Dad, I'm not asking. I'm telling you. If you don't help us with this property tax, they will take the house. Is that what you want? For your only daughter to be homeless?" And then, the one that made me drop the paper as if it were on fire. "If you don't send the money by Friday, I swear to God I will start selling off Mom's jewelry, that china cabinet you love. It'll be the first to go. Don't test me. Dad, I am not Elena. I am not your little project. I am your daughter." She had threatened to sell her own dead mother's belongings to extort money from her father. He wasn't just her safety net. He was her emotional and financial ATM. And she was hitting withdraw so hard and so often, she'd finally broken the machine. This was it. This was the motive. This was the undue influence. It just wasn't mine. Meanwhile, Noah was doing his own digging. He spent 2 days interviewing Henry's neighbors, the members of his chess club, his old golf partners. Their testimony was ironclad. Henry, confused. One neighbor, a retired doctor, had scoffed. That man was sharper than his own lawyer. He told me just last month. "My granddaughter Elena, she's got a mind like a steel trap, sharper than mine, even..." Noah had it all on sworn affidavits. Then Noah called me, his voice electric. "You are not going to believe this," he said. "Try me. Vivian Lane, this isn't her first rodeo. I ran a background check on her civil court history. She's contested 2 other wills, both on her mother's side of the family." My blood went cold. "What?" "An aunt and an uncle, both times. She was left a small, specific cash bequest, both times. She sued the main beneficiaries, her cousins, claiming undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. Her script was identical. What happened? She lost, both times. The judge in the second case practically laughed her out of court, cited her pattern of frivolous litigation. She's a serial inheritance hunter, Elena, and you are just her latest target." That night, I went back to my apartment. I cleared the entire dining room wall. I went to an office supply store and bought 3 poster boards, a ream of index cards, and a box of red string. I was back in prosecutor mode. This was my war room. I pinned the Riverside Beacon article in the center. The victim, to the left. I mapped out the money, the ledgers, the bank transfers, the corresponding vacation photos, To the right, I mapped out her motive, the printed emails, the threats, the history of her 2 failed lawsuits. I connected them with the red string, the web of lies becoming clearer and clearer. This wasn't an impulsive act of a grieving daughter. This was a long con, a deliberate, calculated plan that started the moment Henry got sick, the moment she realized he was building a legal fortress around his estate. The lawsuit wasn't a reaction to the will. It was the backup plan all along. She hadn't just attacked me. She had been financially and emotionally exploiting a vulnerable old man for 15 years. She hadn't just filed a civil suit. She had, in all likelihood, committed criminal fraud. I looked at the wall, at the intricate, ugly map of her greed. "Okay, Vivian," I whispered to the empty room. "You wanted a fight." I picked up my phone and dialed Noah. "Noah, get a pen. We're filing our response, and we're filing a countersuit for financial exploitation of the elderly, and we're going to subpoena her, my father, and Maddie. It's time to take depositions." She thought she was fighting her 18-year-old stepdaughter. She was about to meet the district attorney's office the moment Noah filed our countersuit, alleging financial exploitation. The entire dynamic shifted. Vivian had expected to be fighting a weeping, defensive girl. She had not expected to be fighting a prosecutor who came armed with ledgers, bank statements, and a 15-year timeline of her own greed. Her response was immediate, and it was brilliant in its viciousness. She stopped being the grieving daughter. That narrative was dead, and she knew it. She pivoted. She immediately became the abused victim of the system. It started with a sealed envelope delivered to my boss, Marla Jennings. An anonymous complaint had been filed with the Westbridge Judicial Ethics Committee. The complaint alleged, in vague but pointed terms, that a certain prosecutor in the criminal division was using county resources, including investigators and access to databases, to intimidate witnesses and build a personal case in a civil matter. The blog post appeared 48 hours later. It was on a sleazy local legal gossip site known for sensationalizing courthouse drama. The headline read, "Westbridge Day's Office in Hot Water? Prosecutor accused of conflict of interest in nasty family feud." The article didn't name me, but it didn't have to. "Sources say," it read, "that the prosecutor, embroiled in a bitter fight over her grandfather's will, has been using her badge to threaten family members, including her elderly stepmother. Is this an ethics violation, or just another day at the Westbridge Injustice Department?" It was a perfectly placed, untraceable hand grenade. The summons from Marla was on my desk before I even had my coat off. I was on leave, but this was an official matter. I walked into her office, and the atmosphere was arctic. "Sit down, Elena," she said. She didn't look angry. She looked tired, which was worse. "I have to ask you, on the record, did you, or did you not, use any office resources to gather information for your countersuit?" "No," I said, my voice clear and steady. "You didn't run a single plate? Check a criminal record? Use a paralegal for research?" "No, Marla. Everything I have, I got on my own time, through my own means, or through my civil attorney, Noah Mercer. The ledgers were in my grandfather's desk. The social media posts were public. The subpoenas were filed by Noah, through Eleanor Briggs. I have been meticulously careful to keep a wall between my work here and my personal life. I had anticipated this. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick binder. This is everything. My entire case file, every document, every source, every receipt for supplies. It's all there. You can have an independent auditor go through it. It's clean." Marla took the binder. She didn't open it. She just stared at me, her gaze penetrating. She had hired me. She had mentored me. She was trying to see if I was lying. "I believe you," she said, finally. "But that's not the point. You've been on leave for less than a month, and you're already the subject of an ethics complaint and a smear campaign. Your stepmother is smart. I'll give her that." She leaned forward. "Listen to me, Elena. Vivian doesn't just want the money. She can't win the money. You and I both know your case is ironclad. She wants to destroy you. She wants your job. She wants your reputation. She wants to make you unemployable and unfireable. She wants to salt the earth, so that even if you win the house, you'll have nothing left to put in it." "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You keep your head down. You let Noah do the talking. You don't engage, and you make damn sure that binder is as clean as you say it is. The committee will investigate, and we will cooperate fully. But if I find one single sheet of office letterhead, Elena, if I find one database query you ran from your home computer, I'll have to fire you myself." The warning was clear. I had the office's support, but it was conditional. I was on my own. The ethics complaint was just the opening shot. The real barrage came 2 nights later. I was at my apartment, sorting through the affidavits from Henry's neighbors, when my cell phone buzzed. It was Noah. "Turn on Channel 5, he said. His voice was grim. "Right now." I fumbled for the remote. And in a developing local story, a grieving daughter says she's the victim of a terrible injustice, perpetrated by one of the county's own. My blood turned to ice. The screen cut to a reporter, standing on a familiar, snow-covered lawn. My God, it was the house in Maple Ridge, and there, on the porch, stood Vivian. She was dressed in a simple, modest sweater. Her makeup was gone. She looked pale, small, and utterly broken. The camera zoomed in on her face as she clutched a tissue. I don't understand." She wept into the reporter's microphone. "I loved her. I raised her as my own after her mother passed. And this is how she repays me? By turning my own father against me?" "Mrs. Lane," the reporter asked, her voice dripping with sympathy. "Your stepdaughter has accused you of abuse. What is your response to that?" Vivian looked up, her eyes wide with perfected innocence. "Abuse? She stammered, as if the concept was too horrible to comprehend. "Oh, goodness, no. It was the other way around." The camera held her in a tight close-up. She was a troubled girl. Elena was full of rage. That night, that Christmas Eve she talks about, Vivian took a shaky breath, as if the memory was too painful. She attacked me. She came home late. She'd been drinking. I don't know. And I confronted her. She just snapped. She pushed me. She pushed me right into the Christmas tree, in front of the whole family. The ornaments, they all broke. She was describing my memory. She was stealing my trauma and wearing it like a costume. I just defended myself," she sobbed, "and she ran away. We thought she'd come back, but she used that night to poison my father against me, to make him believe I was the monster, and now she's using her power, her job as a prosecutor, to punish me for it, to steal my father's legacy." And then, the final, devastating blow. The camera panned back, and there he was, my father, Douglas Lane. He stepped into the frame, putting a protective arm around Vivian's shoulder. He looked like a shell, his eyes dead, his face a pasty gray. "Is that true, Mr. Lane?" the reporter asked. "Did your daughter attack your wife?" My father looked down, unable to meet the camera's gaze. He just nodded, a slow, miserable nod. She was a difficult child," he mumbled, his voice thick. Vivian has been a saint. We just want this to be over. We just want what's fair." The screen cut back to the anchor. I was numb. I couldn't feel my hands. He had done it. After 15 years of silence, he had finally picked a side. He had gone on television and, in front of the entire city, called me a violent, unstable liar. He had confirmed her story. The phone in my hand buzzed again. An email, a new one, then another, and another. The news segment had included my name. The hate mail started almost instantly. "You disgusting, ungrateful bitch. I hope they disbar you. Inheritance hunter. You're a disgrace to your mother's memory. I know what you did. You better watch your back." I dropped the phone and ran to the bathroom, vomiting into the sink. My legs wouldn't hold me. I slid to the cold tile floor, my back against the cabinet. This was it. My breaking point. She'd won. She'd taken my father. She'd poisoned my colleagues. She was destroying my career. She was making me into a public monster. I was completely, utterly alone. I sat there for an hour, maybe 2. The phone kept buzzing on the living room floor, each vibration a fresh wave of assault. Finally, around 10 p.m., it rang. A real call. A number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. It rang again, and again. On the 4th ring, I picked it up, my voice raw. "What?" I spat. There was a pause. Then, a voice, old and crisp as parchment. A voice I hadn't heard in years. "Well, you sound like hell." "That means you're losing." It was Judge Lydia Monroe. Retired, the woman who had been my first mentor, my first boss when I was a terrified intern, the woman Henry had played chess with. "Judge?" I whispered, tears instantly filling my eyes. "I saw the news." "Elena," she said, her voice softening just a fraction. "It was a disgusting piece of yellow journalism. Your father is a coward, and your stepmother is a viper. Now, stop crying. It's unbecoming." "I don't know what to do," I choked out. She's saying I attacked her. My father, he backed her up." "Of course he did," Lydia snorted. "He's a fool. He's been a fool for 20 years. That's not what's important. What's important is what you do next. Your grandfather. You know, he came to see me about a year before he passed." My breath caught. "He did?" "Yes. He didn't come as a friend. He came for a legal consultation. He was paying the full hourly rate. He wanted to know, specifically, how to structure his will to make it invulnerable to the inevitable, gold-digging lawsuit from my daughter." His words, not mine. He was sharp. Elena, sharper than my own clerks. He had all his medical records. He had a psych eval. He was building a case for his own sanity. "I know," I said. "Eleanor Briggs has them." "Good. But he also told me something else. He said, 'Lydia, when I'm gone, Vivian is going to go after Elena. Not just for the money. She's going to try to ruin the girl. She can't stand that Elena is everything she's not.' And he made me promise him something." "What?" "He said, 'If that day comes, Lydia, you call her, and you remind her of one thing. You tell her she is not just my granddaughter. She is not just a victim. You tell her she is a damn good lawyer, and she needs to start acting like it.'" A sob escaped my chest, one of relief and grief all mixed together. "I'm not just calling to give you a pep talk, child," Lydia continued, her voice all business again. "I'm calling because I'm willing to sign a sworn affidavit detailing that entire conversation. My professional opinion as an officer of the court is that Henry Cole was one of the sharpest, most competent men I have ever known, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Send your man, Mercer, to my house tomorrow at 9 a.m. He can take my statement." She was giving me a character witness, a retired judge, a witness Vivian had no idea existed. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you, Judge." "Don't thank me. Thank Henry. He was a better chess player than I was, and he was always thinking 5 moves ahead. Now, get off the floor, wash your face, and get back to your war room. You've got work to do." She hung up. I stood up, my knees cracking. I walked to the bathroom mirror. My face was pale, streaked with tears and makeup. I looked like the victim Vivian wanted me to be. I turned on the cold water and scrubbed my face raw. I walked out onto my small balcony. The city was spread out below me, covered in a blanket of clean white snow. It was quiet. Vivian thought this was a game of who's the better daughter. She thought she could win by playing the part of the perfect victim. She was wrong. This wasn't a family drama anymore. It was a legal battle. And she was right about one thing. It was about who knew the truth and who knew the law. She just didn't realize I was the one who knew both. Judge Halcott, growing visibly impatient with the dueling motions and escalating vitriol from both sides, had finally slammed his hand on his desk. "I am ordering you both to mandatory mediation, and I want it done before the first of the year." Grant Holloway, Vivian's lawyer, had stood up, his face a mask of oily sincerity. "Your Honor, in the spirit of the season, my client would be happy to host the mediation at her home," he'd smiled. "In fact, she insists. What better time to heal a family than on Christmas Eve?" It was a brilliant, toxic move, a PR masterstroke. It painted Vivian as the magnanimous peacemaker, the forgiving mother opening her home. If I refused, I was the cold, litigious prosecutor, the Grinch rejecting the olive branch. If I accepted, I was walking into the lion's den. On that night, the anniversary. And so, here I was, 15 years to the day after I'd been thrown out in the snow, walking up the heated stone path to Vivian's new home. It was not a house. It was a statement, a 4,000-square-foot monument to beige stucco and bad taste in Lake Crest Hills. This was the house Henry's money had bought. This was the home built on a foundation of Douglas's knee surgery, Maddie's special tutoring, and a dozen other lies, all meticulously recorded in his ledgers. The air was frigid, but the anger in my veins kept me warm. Noah's last text was buzzing in my pocket. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't eat the food. This isn't mediation. Elena, it's an ambush." I was carrying my own leather portfolio, heavy with the spreadsheets, the affidavits from Henry's neighbors, and the copies of Vivian's 2 previously failed lawsuits. It wasn't for her. It was my armor. My father, Douglas, opened the door. He looked smaller than I remembered. Shrunken. His face was puffy, his eyes bloodshot. He was already halfway through a holiday drunk. "Elena," he mumbled, not meeting my gaze. "You're here." "I'm here?" He stepped aside, and the smell of the house hit me. It was an overwhelming, cloying wave of hot mulled wine, expensive perfume, and simmering resentment. The heat was cranked to an oppressive level. Vivian was in her element. The house was decorated within an inch of its life. The Christmas tree wasn't a tree. It was a sequoia, at least 15 feet tall, dripping with thousands of white gold lights and ornaments so uniform they must have been installed by a team. A long dining table was groaning under the weight of a catered buffet. And there, in the center of the grand piano in the living room, was the centerpiece, a massive, ornate porcelain nativity set. It was a sprawling, catalog-perfect scene. Mary, Joseph, the Magi, a host of shepherds, in front of the manger, a choir of porcelain angels held banners. Vivian, in a nauseating display of family, had placed small, engraved placards for each family member. Vivian and Douglas were right at the front, next to Mary. Maddie was by the shepherds. My own placard, "Elena," was off to the side, next to the donkey. "Elena, darling!" Vivian's voice trilled. She swept across the room, enveloped in a cloud of cashmere and Chanel No. 5. "You came. Oh, I'm so glad. I told Pastor Mike you'd come. I knew your heart was in the right place." She pulled me into a stiff, cold hug. Her claws gripped my arm. "Pastor Mike is our mediator," she whispered, as if letting me in on a secret. "He's such a comfort. He's a very dear friend." Of course he was. The mediator wasn't a neutral, court-appointed official. He was her pastor. Pastor Mike was a soft-looking man in a turtleneck, his face set in a look of permanent, practiced empathy. He was sitting on a plush sofa, a plate of cookies in his lap. A few other relatives were scattered around the room, the same ones who had stood silent and watched me be thrown out 15 years ago. This wasn't mediation. It was a curated audience for my execution. And in the corner, on an ottoman, as far from her mother as possible, sat Maddie. She was 19 now, but she looked like a ghost. She was pale, her dark hair lank, her eyes huge in her thin face. She was twisting a napkin in her hands, her knuckles white. She looked up when I walked in, And her eyes, the same terrified eyes I remembered from the staircase, met mine. A jolt, sharp and electric, passed between us before she quickly looked away. We all sat. The air was thick with unspoken words. "Thank you for joining us, Elena," Pastor Mike began, his voice soft and buttery. "We are here in a spirit of healing. Christmas, after all, is the time for forgiveness." I said nothing. I just opened my portfolio on my lap. "Vivian," he prompted gently, "why don't you start?" Vivian took a shaky breath, the perfect picture of a wounded matriarch. "Thank you, Pastor. I just want what's best for this family. All this ugliness, this fighting." She looked at me, her eyes brimming with fresh, theatrical tears. "Elena, honey, I know you've been carrying so much anger. I know you've created stories to make sense of your pain." She looked at the relatives, her voice dropping. She's told people I hit her, that I threw her out, all those years ago, on this very night." The relatives nodded in sympathy. "Honey," she said, her voice dripping with pity, "I have forgiven you for that lie. I forgave you the moment you told it. I know you were just a troubled girl, acting out. I have never been anything but a mother to you." My blood pressure skyrocketed. My hand tightened on a pen. "And this terrible business with my father's will," Vivian continued, turning back to the pastor. "He was an old man. He was sick. He was confused. He wasn't in his right mind." My father stared into his glass, swirling the amber liquid. He was silent. "I know he loved me," Vivian said, her voice cracking. "And I know, in his heart, he would have wanted things to be equal, fair. That's all I'm asking for. For his true wishes to be honored, not what he was convinced to write down when he wasn't himself." She was at the peak of her performance, the grieving daughter, the forgiving mother, the reasonable victim. Everyone in the room was captivated. Everyone except Maddie. I had been watching her. She was still on the ottoman, her head down, but she was moving. She'd gotten up, her movements stiff, and walked toward the piano. Her back was to her mother. She pretended to be looking at the lights on the tree. Then she bent down, as if to adjust one of the porcelain figurines in the Nativity set. She was right next to my chair. Vivian was still talking. "And all I want is for Elena to stop this vendetta." I felt a sudden, cold pressure in my hand, the one that was dangling by the side of my chair. My head snapped down. Maddie was frozen, her back to the room, her small hand next to mine. She was pressing something into my palm. It was one of the porcelain angels. Her lips moved, and the sound was so quiet, it was barely air. "Look inside," she whispered. "Don't let her see." Then, just as quickly, she moved away, picking up a glass of water from a tray. Her hand shaking so violently she almost dropped it. She retreated to her corner. No one had seen. Vivian was too busy crying. My father was too busy drinking. The pastor was too busy nodding. My heart was a fist, pounding against my ribs. The porcelain angel was small and cold in my palm. I waited for 30 seconds. Vivian had moved on to a tearful anecdote about a sweater she'd bought Henry. I stood up. The room went silent. Every eye was on me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice hoarse. "I need to use the restroom." Vivian's eyes, narrowed to slits, followed me. The tears had vanished. "Of course, dear," she said, her voice pure ice. "Down the hall, to the left." I walked, my legs stiff. I locked the bathroom door. It was a palatial room, all gold fixtures and black marble. I leaned against the sink, my hand shaking. I opened my palm, the angel. I turned it over. The bottom was hollow, covered by a small, fuzzy felt circle, but it was loose. I peeled it back with my fingernail. Tucked inside was a tiny, tightly folded square of paper. My fingers were clumsy. I fumbled with it, unfolding the tiny, cramped note. It was written in blue ballpoint, the handwriting shaky and desperate. It was Maddie's. My eyes scanned the words. Christmas that year, Mom did what? I have proof. Don't believe them. I need you. Proof. My breath hitched. Proof of what? That she'd slapped me? That she'd thrown me out? I was about to fold it back up when I saw more writing on the inside, hidden by the last fold. A few more words. She made me lie for 10 years. The secret is in the music box. Old attic. I read it twice, 3 times. The music box, old attic, not this attic, not in this palace of lies. The old attic, in the house in Maple Ridge. The scene of the crime. She made me lie for 10 years. This wasn't just about a slap. A slap is one person's word against another's. My father had proven that. This was something else. This was a secret so big. Vivian had built a 10-year wall of lies around it, using her own daughter as the bricks. This was something she had covered up. What was in that music box? A photograph? A recording? A document? The nativity scene. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a dead drop. A sharp, polite knock rapped on the bathroom door. Elena, dear? Vivian's voice, sweet as poison, cooed through the wood. Everything all right in there? We're waiting for you. We're all waiting to forgive you. I crumpled the note in my fist. I shoved it deep into my pants pocket. I palmed the porcelain angel. I unlocked the door. My face a mask. She stood there, her head tilted, a perfect imitation of concern. I'm fine, I said, my voice colder than the snow outside. I walked past her, back into the living room. I sat down in my chair. I placed the little angel on the table next to me, facing her. I looked at the nativity set, this monument to a holy night, and I looked at Vivian, who was already relaunching into her sermon about her father's confused mind. She had no idea. She thought she was the one holding all the cards. She had no idea that a terrified 19-year-old girl had just slipped a bomb into my hand, hidden inside a porcelain angel. The game had just changed. I didn't move for a full minute. The sound in the living room, Vivian's syrupy voice, the clink of my father's glass, the pastor's unctuous murmurs, faded into a dull roar. The note in my pocket felt radioactive. I have proof. The music box. I had to get out, and I had to get Maddie. I let Vivian's monologue on forgiveness continue for another 5 minutes, long enough for my exit to look like a retreat, not a plan. Then I stood up. The room, once again, went silent. Thank you, Pastor Mike, for your time, I said, my voice flat. Vivian, thank you for the hospitality. I snapped my briefcase shut. But I've heard nothing here tonight that changes the legal facts of my grandfather's documented wishes. He was of sound mind, and he was not influenced. We are done here. Elena, wait, Vivian cried, standing, her face a mask of, see, she's unreasonable, for the pastor. You're running away. We're trying to heal. No, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I'm just not interested in your performance. I walked out the front door, my father just watching me, his mouth half open, a ghost in his own home. The cold hit me. I didn't go to my car. I walked to the end of her long, curved driveway and stood in the shadow of a large pine tree, my breath pluming. I waited. 10 minutes later, the front door opened again. The mediation was clearly over. The pastor left first, shaking his head. The other relatives followed, muttering about my ingratitude. Finally, the 3 of them emerged. Vivian was furious, her voice a sharp hiss. I cannot believe her, after everything. My father just mumbled, and trailing behind them, her head bowed, was Maddie. I stepped out of the shadow. Maddie. The 3 of them froze. Vivian's face went from anger to pure, possessive rage. Get in the car, Maddie, now. Maddie, I need to talk to you, I said, my voice calm, the one I used in interrogation rooms. You will not speak to her, Vivian shrieked, grabbing Maddie's arm. She is my daughter. You are nothing. Let her go. I took a step forward. This is not about you. Vivian, this is between me and my cousin. And then, Maddie did the bravest thing I'd ever seen her do. She yanked her arm out of her mother's grip. "No," she whispered. "What did you say to me?" Vivian looked apoplectic. "No," Maddie said, louder this time, her voice shaking but clear. She looked at me, her eyes streaming with tears. I can't do it anymore. Elena, I can't." "Maddie, shut up," my father hissed, finally finding his voice. "She made me lie," Maddie sobbed, ignoring him, speaking only to me. "I can't live like this. I don't want to be her. I don't want to be like her." "Get in my car," I said to her, unlocking the doors from my fob. "Maddie!" Vivian screamed. Maddie ran. She dove into the passenger seat of my car, slammed the door, and locked it. Vivian lunged at the window, pounding on the glass. "You brat! You ungrateful little... I will send you away. I swear to God, I will..." I got in the driver's seat and started the engine. I put the car in reverse, and Vivian had to jump back to avoid being hit. As I sped out of Lake Crest Hills, she just stood in the middle of the road, screaming, a perfect suburban banshee. We didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. Maddie just cried. Deep, ragged sobs that shook her whole body. I just drove. I handed her a box of tissues from the console. "Thank you," she finally whispered, wiping her face. "The music box," I said, my voice gentle. "Where is it?" It's in the old house, in Maple Ridge." "Why there?" We never moved everything. After Grandpa Henry started giving us money. She wanted a bigger house, a statement house. She wanted to get out of the house of bad memories. That's what she called it. She just packed up all the old holiday stuff and shoved it in the attic there. She's been trying to rent the place, but it's just been sitting empty. "The note," I said. "You said she made you lie for 10 years. Maddie nodded, her face pale in the dashboard lights. "That night, that Christmas, after you left, she came upstairs. I was in my room, hiding. She grabbed me, Elena. She shook me. She told me that if anyone ever asked, I was to say that you were screaming, that you were drunk, that you pushed her into the tree. She made me practice it, over and over. Elena pushed Mom. Elena was bad," she said. She said if I ever told the truth, or ever told Dad what really happened, she'd send me to that disciplinary boarding school, the one in Utah. She said they'd fix me. My blood ran cold. She had threatened her own 9-year-old daughter with a reform school to cover up an assault. "Get us there," I said. "Tell me how to get to the old house." 20 minutes later, we were on the dark, quiet street in Maple Ridge. The house looked dead. A "for rent" sign hung crookedly from a post in the overgrown yard. "How do we get in?" "The key," Maddie said, her voice stronger. She always kept a spare under the loose flagstone by the porch. She's pathologically lazy. She would have never bothered to move it. Maddie was right. I found the key, caked in mud. The lock was stiff, but it turned. The air that hit us as we opened the door was freezing, heavy with the smell of dust, mildew, and decay. This wasn't a home, it was a tomb. We used our phone flashlights. The living room was empty, the floors bare, but the ghosts were everywhere. I could see the faint outline in the dust where the sofa had been, the empty hook where the stockings used to hang, and the wall, next to the bay window where the tree had been. I ran my hand over it. I could still feel the faint indentation in the drywall where my head had hit. "The attic," I said, my voice tight. The pull-down chain was rusty. I gave it a hard yank, and the stairs groaned open, a cloud of dust raining down on us. "This is it," Maddie whispered. The attic was a graveyard of our old life, my father's forgotten golf clubs, my old textbooks, and in the corner, a stack of cardboard boxes, all labeled holiday. "It's in that one," Maddie said, pointing to a large, sagging box. "The one with the reindeer on it." We pulled it down. It was filled with tangled strings of lights, broken ornaments, and old, musty-smelling wrapping paper, and at the very bottom, wrapped in a swath of red velvet, was the music box. It was silver, tarnished almost black, in the shape of a reindeer. I opened the lid. It was supposed to play a tinny version of Rudolph. It was silent. "She kept it locked," Maddie said, "but she was always hiding things in it. I wasn't supposed to know." I turned it over. The bottom panel wasn't just screwed on. It was held in place by a layer of thick, yellowed tape. I took my car key and sliced the tape open. The panel fell away. Inside, nestled on the dusty velvet, were three things: a small blue SD card, a thick wad of folded papers, and a small stack of glossy photographs. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I think I know," Maddie said, her eyes wide. That was my camera. My new digital camera. Grandpa Henry gave it to me for my birthday that year. I was filming. That night, I was filming the new lights on the tree. I think I just kept filming." My heart stopped. We ran. We didn't bother to close the box. We ran out of the attic, out of the house, locking the door behind us. We sat in my car, the engine off, the only light coming from the street lamp half a block away. I pulled out my laptop, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get it open. I plugged in the SD card. There was one file, XMAS video, move. I clicked it. It was shaky. The sound was tinny. Jingle Bell Rock was playing in the background. It was a 10-year-old's view of a Christmas tree, all blurry lights and close-ups of ornaments. Then, voices, my voice, and hers. "You're just a glorified warden. Ungrateful little brat." The camera swings wildly, and suddenly, we're in the frame. The kitchen door. Vivian, me, my father, and I saw it. The thing I had buried. She didn't just slap me. She grabbed my arm, spun me, and slammed my wrist and forearm against the corner of the wooden mantelpiece. I cried out. Then came the backhand. It was so much more violent than I'd even remembered. I saw myself stumble, crash into the tree. The sound of breaking glass. And my father. He just stood there. He watched it. He watched her assault me, and he just sipped his drink. The camera didn't stop. It recorded me being dragged out. The door slamming. Then, the camera turned. It panned up the stairs, and I saw a flash of Maddie's own face, her eyes wide with terror. Then, Vivian's voice, right by the camera, screaming. "You did not see a thing? Do you hear me?" Maddie's small, terrified whimper. "If anyone asks," Vivian's voice snarled, "you saw Elena attack me. You saw her push me. You nod and you say yes. Do you understand me? Do you?" A small, "Yes, Mommy." The video went black. I was hyperventilating. It wasn't just proof of the assault. It was proof of witness tampering, coercion of a minor, a pattern of abuse. "The papers," I choked out, my voice thick. "What are the papers?" I unfolded them. They weren't just papers. They were bank documents, loan applications, a home equity line of credit, taken out, against this house, the house in Henry's name, and the signature. Henry Cole. It wasn't his. It was a clumsy, childish forgery. It looked more like Vivian's looping signature than Henry's sharp, precise script. She had been forging his name. She had been taking out loans against his assets, without his knowledge, on top of all the money he was just giving her. And the photographs, they were the key, Vivian, standing next to a brand new, bright red convertible, the one from her social media. Vivian and my father, clinking champagne glasses in Paris. The dates, printed in the corner, were from the same week the loan applications were filed. This was it. This was everything. She wasn't just an emotional abuser. She wasn't just a financial leech. She was a criminal, bank fraud, forgery, identity theft. Maddie was sobbing next to me. "I didn't know," she wept. "I didn't know about the money. I just remembered the video. She told me she deleted it. I swear, I didn't know." "She didn't delete it," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. All the fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp, and lethal certainty. She kept it. She kept it all. Because she's sloppy. Because she's arrogant. I put the SD card, the papers, and the photos into my pocket. Maddie, I said, turning to her. This is not a civil case anymore. This is not about a will. Your mother has committed multiple serious felonies, forgery, fraud. This is criminal. Maddie looked at me, her face a mess of tears and mascara, but her eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. Please, she whispered, please, don't make me go back there. Don't make me keep living with this. I just want it to be over. I want to tell the truth. I put my hand on her shoulder. You're going to, I promised. I'm going to protect you, but I'm going to use this. I am going to use all of it. And when I do, it is going to pull this entire family into a storm. It will be ugly. You have to be ready for that. She took a deep, shuddering breath and nodded. I don't care, she said, her voice small but hard. I'm tired of being scared. I took Maddie to a 24-hour diner first. I fed her, I got her coffee, then hot chocolate, and watched her hands shake as she told me everything about the years of listening to the lie, of having to repeat it at holidays, of watching her mother become a professional victim after she was stable. I checked her into a motel suite 40 minutes out of town, under my name, and paid in cash. I told her to turn her phone off. For the first time, she was my witness, and I was going to protect her. At 5 a.m. the next morning, I was in Noah Mercer's office. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the night making copies. I placed the Ziploc bag on his desk, the SD card, the forged loan applications, the photos. This was in the music box, I said. Noah, who was still rubbing sleep from his eyes, looked at the bag. What music box? Just look. I plugged the SD card into his laptop. I didn't want to see it again. I watched his face instead. His expression went from tired curiosity to confusion, and then to a sharp, pale-faced horror. He watched the whole thing. He saw the assault. He saw my father do nothing. And he heard, clear as a bell, Vivian's voice threatening a 10-year-old Maddie. He watched it twice, his mouth hanging open. My God, Elena, he whispered. That's not just an assault. That's witness tampering. That's coercion of a minor. Keep going, I said. It gets worse. I pushed the stack of forged loan applications across the desk. He leafed through them, his eyes getting wider. He saw the clumsy Henry Cole signature. He saw the dates. This is bank fraud, he said, his voice flat. This is identity theft. This is, I don't even know how many felonies this is. This is a criminal enterprise. He looked up at me, his lawyer brain replaced by genuine shock. We have to go to the police, not your office, a different jurisdiction. We hand this over now. This is a criminal case. Elena, this isn't probate. No, I said. The word was cold and hard. No? What do you mean? No, this is a slam dunk. She'll go to prison. I don't care about prison. Noah, not yet. I leaned forward, my hands flat on his desk. Think, we go to the police. This becomes a criminal investigation. This evidence gets sealed. Our civil trial gets postponed. Pending the outcome. Vivian screams that I'm using my prosecutor's power to fabricate evidence. It gets tied up in a criminal court for 2 years. She'll get a plea deal. She'll get probation. And the will? The probate case? It'll be a circus. The truth will be buried under procedure. I am not letting that happen. So what's the plan? He asked. The plan is to use this in the civil trial. Next week, I want to see her. Under oath. Explain that video. I want to see her explain those signatures to a civil court judge. In public. With the press she loves so much sitting in the front row. I want to expose her. Jail is too kind. I want to take away the one thing she's ever cared about. Her reputation and her money. Noah was pacing now. Okay. The admissibility of the video. Holloway will scream. He'll say it was recorded illegally, a minor, one-party consent. It's a gray area. It's not a gray area, I said, standing up. We're not introducing it to prove the assault. We're introducing it to impeach her. She has already, in a sworn deposition and on public television, stated that I assaulted her. She's going to get on that stand and perjure herself. This video is the silver bullet that proves she lied. It's not about the assault. It's about her perjury. Noah stopped pacing. A slow, wolfish grin spread across his face. Oh, Elena, you are terrifying. I love it. Now, I said, my voice all business. We have 1 week. We have to prepare our witnesses, and I have to prepare myself. My first stop was the motel. I spent 2 days with Maddie. She was terrified. Vivian, realizing her daughter was gone, had been blowing up her phone, alternating between tearful, "I'm so worried," baby texts, and venomous, "You ungrateful brat, I will have you committed" voicemails. "I can't do this, Elena," she sobbed when I sat with her. She'll do it. She'll send me away. She'll tell everyone I'm crazy." I took her phone and turned it off. I put it in my briefcase. "She can't," I said, my voice gentle. "Look at me. Maddie, she has been destroying you your entire life. She used you as a shield. She used you as a brick to build her wall of lies. This is the one, single time you get to take the power back. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm not asking you to perform. I'm just asking you, when the time comes, to tell the truth. That's it. She will look at you. She will try to scare you. And when she does, you will look at me." Her tears slowed. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm tired of being scared." While Maddie was being prepped, Noah was busy. He took Judge Lydia Monroe's sworn affidavit. It was magnificent. She was, in her own words, an officer of the court and a personal friend of the deceased, whom I can state, with professional and personal certainty, was more mentally competent at 85 than most lawyers are at 30. She detailed Henry's visit, his words about the dragon, his clear-eyed, pragmatic, and fortress-like defense of his own wishes. Next, Eleanor Briggs prepared her testimony. It was a dry, devastating timeline of Henry's competence. Henry insisted on 3 separate appointments, she'd written in her statement. He brought his own medical records from the Mayo Clinic. He brought a cognitive evaluation he'd paid for himself. He had me and my paralegal sign as witnesses to his state of mind. He was, in essence, pre-litigating his own will. It was the most thorough estate defense I have ever participated in. My apartment became the war room again, but the wall of red string had changed. It was no longer a spider's web. It was a timeline, a single, linear, damning narrative. January 10th, Henry's ledger. 5,000. Maddie's dental. January 12th, Vivian's forged signature on a $20,000 loan application. January 15th, Vivian's social media post. Paris, blessed, March 2nd, Henry's ledger. 8,000. Douglas's knee. March 6th, Vivian's social media post. New convertible. Treat yourself. It was all there, a perfect, pathological record of fraud. Noah and I spent 3 nights straight in that room. He played Grant Holloway. He was brutal. "Ms. Ryan," he'd grill me. "Isn't it true you hated your stepmother? Isn't it true you were a troubled teen? Isn't it true you were just jealous of her relationship with your father?" I had to learn to tell the story, my story, not with emotion, not as a victim, but as a prosecutor. She grabbed my arm. She slammed it into the mantel. She backhanded me across the face. She threw my suitcase onto the porch. She locked the door. "Those are the facts of the event." "That's a no?" He'd press. "That is the truth. My hate is irrelevant. Her actions are the facts." It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, to take the most painful, humiliating night of my life and strip it of its power, turning it into simple, cold, prosecutable facts. The day before the trial, 2 things happened. First, I got a text from Marla Jennings. It wasn't from her official work phone. It was from her personal cell. It said, "Ethics complaint dismissed. With prejudice. See you in court. Ryan," in the audience. The knot in my chest, the one that had been there for a month, finally eased. I wasn't going to be fired. The office was standing behind me, quietly, but they were there. The second thing happened at 10 p.m. I was sitting in my silent apartment, staring at the wall, when my phone rang. An unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A text immediately popped up. "Elena, pick up. It's Vivian. We need to talk before you do something stupid." My blood turned to ice. She knew. She must have known Maddie was gone. She was panicking. I dialed the number. She picked up on the first ring. "Elena." Her voice was not the weeping victim. It was not the screaming banshee. It was the cold, calculating woman from the emails. "Vivian, this has gotten out of hand," she said, her voice tight. This nonsense with Maddie, it's cruel. You've kidnapped her." "I haven't. I've given her a safe place to stay, away from her abuser. She's an adult. She can be where she wants. Don't you be righteous with me," she spat. "You have no idea what you're doing. You're going to ruin this whole family. Think of your father. You should have thought of him when you were forging his father-in-law's name." Silence. A dead, cold, electric silence. I had her. She knew I knew. Her voice changed. The bargaining began. "What do you want, Elena?" she asked, her voice suddenly weary. "Money? Is that it? Fine. I want the will to be validated. I want the truth to come out." "Don't be a fool," she snapped. "The truth? The truth is messy. It ruins careers. Yours, mine, your father's. Think of what this will do to Maddie's future." "You've already ruined Maddie's future." She took a deep breath. 60%. "What?" "You give me 60% of the estate, and this all goes away. I'll drop the suit. I'll retract the ethics complaint. I will even issue a public statement that we have reconciled, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. This all goes away. Tomorrow. 60-40. That's my final offer." The audacity of it was breathtaking. She was trying to buy my silence. I looked at the picture of Henry on my wall. I looked at the timeline of her crimes. "Vivian," I said, my voice calm, all the anger gone, replaced by something hard and absolute. "You used Christmas to throw an 18-year-old girl out of her home. This year, I'm using Christmas to bring the truth into a courtroom. I'll see you tomorrow." I hung up the phone. The next morning, the day of the trial, it was gray, and snow was just beginning to fall. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my apartment. I was not in one of my usual boxy prosecutor suits. I was wearing a black, perfectly tailored wool sheath dress. My hair was pulled back in a tight, severe bun. I put on the one piece of jewelry I owned that had been my grandmother's. A simple, heavy, silver bracelet. It felt like armor on my wrist. I looked at the woman in the mirror. I wasn't the girl on the porch. I wasn't the terrified victim. I wasn't even the defendant, waiting to be judged. I picked up my briefcase, the one containing the silver bullet. I walked out of my apartment, into the cold, and I headed to the courthouse. Today, I was not the defendant. I was the one asking the questions. The courtroom was a standing-room-only pressure cooker. Every seat was taken. The reporters, smelling blood, were crammed into the first 2 rows. Behind them, the peanut gallery of relatives, the same ones who had watched me get thrown out, their faces a mixture of confusion and morbid curiosity. And in the back row, I saw them, Marla Jennings, sitting ramrod straight. Next to her, Eleanor Briggs, and next to her, Judge Lydia Monroe. My grandfather's neighbors were there, too. My allies. My real family. Vivian swept in, flanked by Grant Holloway and my father. She was, as always, a vision. She wore a simple, dove-gray suit, her makeup subtle, her eyes already brimming with a practiced mist of tears. She was ready for her close-up, playing the role of the humble victim for Judge Halcott. This was a bench trial. No jury. But Vivian knew her audience was the entire room. "We are here," Grant Holloway began, his voice thundering with indignation, "because a good, decent woman's love has been twisted, because a loving stepmother, who took in a troubled girl's." I tuned him out. I'd read his opening statement. It was a fantasy, a story of a kind, doting Vivian and a rebellious, angry Elena. He painted a picture of a woman who had given everything, only to have her confused. Elderly father poisoned against her in his final weakest moments by a calculating, vengeful stepdaughter, motivated by a childish 15-year-old grudge. It was a good story, plausible, simple, full of all the stereotypes she had fed the media. And then she took the stand. This was her moment. "Vivian," Holloway said, his voice dripping with sympathy, "can you tell the court about the night of December 24th, 15 years ago?" Vivian's face crumpled. A single, perfect tear rolled down her cheek. It was the worst night of my life," she whispered. "Why?" "Elena, she came home very late. We were all so worried." She dabbed her eye. We could smell alcohol on her. She'd been with a boy. I think when I tried to talk to her, just to ask if she was okay. She snapped. I watched, mesmerized by the sheer audacity of the performance. She started screaming," Vivian sobbed, "that I wasn't her mother, that she hated me. And then she shoved me. She shoved me so hard, I fell backward, right into our beautiful Christmas tree. It all came crashing down." "What did you do?" Holloway asked, his voice a low, protective growl. "What could I do?" she said, looking at Judge Halcott, her eyes wide with innocence. I defended myself. I pushed her away, and she ran. She ran out of the house. We thought she'd come back, but she never did. She just used that night to tell everyone I was a monster, to tell my father. Horrible lies." Holloway let her words hang in the air. He then went on to paint me as emotionally unstable, a known troublemaker with a history of vindictive behavior, suggesting my entire career, my entire life, was a long con to get revenge and steal the inheritance that rightfully belonged to her devoted daughter. The performance was flawless. The courtroom was silent. I could feel the doubt creeping into the room. Then it was Noah's turn. He stood up, his suit crisp, his demeanor completely calm. He looked nothing like the young, excitable lawyer from his office. He looked like a surgeon. "Mrs. Lane," he began, his voice polite. "You've testified that you were a devoted daughter. Is that correct?" "Yes," she said, sniffing. "I loved my father more than anything." "And you've testified that your father was confused in his last years, and that he cut you off?" "Yes, Elena. She isolated him. He wasn't himself. So, in his confused state, he just stopped supporting you?" "Yes," she said sadly. "It was heartbreaking." "I see." Noah walked to the table and picked up a large binder. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence Defendant's Exhibit A. This is a certified accounting of all financial transactions from the deceased, Henry Cole, to the plaintiffs, Vivian and Douglas Lane, over the last 15 years. Holloway objected. "Relevance? It speaks directly to the plaintiff's claim of being cut off and her entire motive," Noah said. "I'll allow it," Halcott said, frowning. "Mrs. Lane," Noah said, projecting the spreadsheet onto the large screen. "Do you recognize these numbers? My accounting shows a monthly support payment of $2,000, plus itemized emergency transfers totaling $742,000. Does that look like a man who cut you off?" Vivian blanched. That was just a father helping his family. Small gifts. He loved to help." "Small gifts. I see. Then, can you explain this?" Noah clicked to the next slide. Defendant's Exhibit B, a home equity line of credit application for $50,000, taken out against Henry's house in Maple Ridge, an asset that was not yours. We discussed it. He approved it. Did he? Noah clicked again. Your Honor, this is Defendant's Exhibit C, a certified report from a forensic handwriting analyst, Mrs. Lane, the analyst states, with 100% certainty that the signature of Henry Cole on this loan application is a forgery. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Furthermore, Noah said, his voice rising, this application was dated March 5th, the same week Mr. Cole was in the hospital for his first cardiac event, Mrs. Lane. Did you forge your father's signature while he was in the hospital? No, she shrieked. That's a lie. It's a fabrication. Judge Halcott leaned over the bench, his face a mask of cold fury. Mrs. Lane, can you explain to this court why a signature, identified by an expert as fraudulent, appears on a loan document that directly benefited you, signed at a time when your father was incapacitated? Vivian just stared, her mouth opening and closing. I don't know. Douglas handled the papers. My father, for the first time, looked up, his face ashen. I didn't. Silence, Halcott roared. Then, it was my turn. I took the stand. I told the truth. I told it flatly, without tears. She grabbed my arm. She slammed it into the mantel. She backhanded me. She threw my suitcase. She locked the door. Grant Holloway got up, sneering. A very compelling story, Ms. Ryan. But isn't this the truth? You were angry. You hated her. And this entire lawsuit, this entire performance, is just you. 15 years later, finally getting the revenge you've always wanted, isn't it? I looked him in the eye. If my grandfather was as weak-minded and easily manipulated as you claim, Mr. Holloway, he wouldn't have been one of the most respected judges in this county for 30 years. He knew exactly what he was doing. And then, Noah stood up. Your Honor, the plaintiff, Mrs. Lane, has under oath stated that she was the one assaulted, that she was the one pushed into the tree. That's correct, Vivian said, regaining her composure. She did. In that case, Your Honor, Noah said, holding up the small blue SD card. The defense would like to play a video. Defendant's Exhibit D. Objection! Holloway screamed, jumping to his feet. Privacy! Illegal recording! We have no idea where this came from. Your Honor, Noah said calmly, this video was not obtained through any criminal act, and its sole purpose is to impeach the plaintiff's sworn testimony. She has lied to this court. This video proves it. I'll allow it, Halcott said, his voice grim. Play the video. The lights went down. The courtroom held its breath. The sound of Jingle Bell Rock, the shaky cam of a 10-year-old, and then the voices, the kitchen, and the slam. The sound of my arm hitting the mantel. The sharp crack of her hand against my face, my father. Just standing there. The court was silent as a tomb. Then, the most damning part, the sound of the door locking, the camera turning, and Vivian's voice, snarling at a terrified child. If anyone asks, you saw Elena attack me. Do you understand me? Do you? The video ended. The lights came up. Vivian was gray. She looked like she was going to be sick. It was a moment of anger, she stammered. It's out of context. Call your next witness. Mr. Mercer, Judge Halcott said, his voice barely a whisper. Defense calls Maddie Cole to the stand. Maddie walked from the back of the courtroom, where I had her sequestered. She was shaking from head to foot. Vivian looked at her, and if looks could kill, Maddie would have burst into flames. Maddie took the oath. Maddie, Noah said gently, I know this is hard. Can you just tell the court what happened that night?" Maddie looked at her mother. Vivian's eyes were burning into her. "Don't you dare!" Maddie looked at me. I gave her a single, steady nod. She turned to the judge. She hit her," Maddie whispered. "My mom. She hurt Elena. And then she made me lie." Her voice grew stronger. "She made me lie for 15 years. Every holiday, every time. She told me I had to say Elena attacked her. She called me her little protector, her little actress. She said if I ever told the truth, she would send me away to a special school for bad girls, hundreds of miles away. She made me so scared, for so long." Noah looked at her, his eyes full in sympathy. "Maddie, why are you telling the truth now? After all this time, why now?" Maddie's eyes filled with tears. She didn't look at her mother. She looked right at me. "Because," she said, her voice finally clear and strong, "because she was the only one. She was the first person in this whole family's who chose me instead of the money." Judge Halcott called a 30-minute recess. When he came back, his face was carved from granite. "First," he said, "this court is referring all evidence related to defendants' exhibits B, C, and D, specifically, the loan applications and the video, to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation." Vivian let out a small, strangled sound. "Second," Halcott continued, "regarding the civil matter, I have reviewed the affidavits from Dr. Allister, Judge Monroe, and Mrs. Briggs. I have reviewed the deceased's own meticulous financial records. It is the finding of this court that Henry Cole was not only of sound mind, but was extraordinarily thorough in his estate planning, precisely because he anticipated this exact, frivolous, and insulting litigation. He chose his heir. He did so with a clear mind and a full heart. His relationship with Ms. Ryan was, as he stated, based on actual presence, not blood. This court validates the will of Henry Cole in its entirety. The plaintiff's petition is dismissed, with prejudice. Furthermore, I am ordering the plaintiffs, Vivian and Douglas Lane, to pay all of defendants' legal fees and an additional sum in punitive damages for this malicious and defamatory suit." It was over. I had won. Vivian shot to her feet, her mask of sanity completely gone. "No, she doesn't get it. She stole it. It's mine. She stole my father. She stole my daughter. She stole my money." "Bailiff, remove her," Halcott said. Not even looking. She was dragged out, screaming. My father just sat there, a hollow, empty man, staring at the wood grain, a coward to the very end. He didn't even look at me as he was led away. The reporters swarmed me on the courthouse steps. I just held up a hand. "My grandfather, Judge Henry Cole, taught me a lot," I said, my voice carrying in the cold air. "He taught me that justice isn't always given to the people who share your blood. It's given to the people who choose to stay." That night, Christmas Eve, I wasn't alone. I was in Henry's house. The fire was roaring, the smell of coffee and pine filled the air, and I was surrounded. Marla was there, with her husband. Eleanor Briggs was there, arguing with Judge Monroe about a Supreme Court decision. And Maddie was there. She was curled up on the sofa, for the first time in her life, looking peaceful. We had a new nativity set on the mantel, a small, simple, wooden one. Maddie got up and placed the little angel in the center. She turned to me, a small, shy smile on her face. "You know," she said, half joking, "if I ever get scared again, if I ever feel like I'm lying, I'm just going to slip a note in here for you to come and save me." I laughed. It was the first real, deep laugh I'd had in months. It was the first Christmas I'd felt in 15 years. Outside, the snow was falling, blanketing the city in white. Inside, it was warm. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat in Henry's study. I picked up one of his old, empty ledgers. I opened it to the first page, and I wrote my first line. Family are the people who stay when the truth is the hardest thing to hear. Thank you for listening to this story. We'd love to know where you're listening from. So please comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.